Priesthood, right? Yeah, priesthood of all believers is the whole phrase there. And so we're going to be, again, and we've got 5 pages of good stuff here, and I'll tell you this as we get started. There's a passage of Scripture that I've always struggled with. And I'll tell you how I struggle with it, not understanding it, but wondering, how does this impact my salvation? Because this passage is linked to your salvation, my salvation. And I'm not going to tell you what it is till we get there, but I will tell you this. There's some words in there, one word in particular, and there's a passage in the book of James I've read 1,000,000 times, and I have a different understanding of it now. And this passage, the other one is in the book of Matthew, and I have a different understanding of it as well. And when you think about it logically, it makes so much sense. So we got to get there. So let's get there. So offering up spiritual sacrifices. So this lesson builds upon the idea of the priesthood, which we discussed the last time we were together, of the New Covenant. The relevant text is 2 verses from chapter 2 of Peter's first letter. And those verses were 5 and 9 of chapter 2. You also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. In verse 9, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of Him who has called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. So our previous lesson focused on the purpose of the priesthood. We saw that the task of priest is to offer sacrifices, right? We saw that they had other things, but their primary task was to offer sacrifices. And those sacrifices were for what purpose? What was the main purpose of those sacrifices in the Old Testament? Okay. Directly related to the people's relationship with God, right? Establishing a right relationship with God was their purpose. They were conduits for that. And the primary way that they did that was through sacrifices. So, and the purpose of such sacrifices is to bring sinners into a saving relationship with God. In many ways, this is summed up in the Word, and now I left one blank in this whole lesson. Let's take some guesses as to what word you think goes there. Reconciliation, great word. Not what I'm looking for, but it would absolutely fit. Propitiation is a good one. What did you say, Mark? Sanctification? That's another good one. Can I give you a hint? It's the way we ended last lesson. As we were talking about how the priesthood actually is related to, it is spiritual. It's a spiritual entity rather than a physical entity. No. So in many ways this is summed up. So this process of being involved in bringing people into a saving relationship with the Lord, with God, evangelism. Remember how we said we related all this to evangelism? We were kind of like, evangelism? So we said that that this bringing people into a saving relationship, being part of that process, is the responsibility of the priesthood, and it's the responsibility of the priesthood of all believers in the New Testament. Therefore, we are all responsible to engage in evangelism. And we said that might make us a little uncomfortable because, the question then was how? How would we do this? And we said we would answer that this week. So that's what we're going to do. All coming back right now? Yeah. So, how are we going to do that? Well, in the context of the word sacrifice, it's not about making sacrifice. We talked about this a little bit. In the sense of giving up something. So every year in the weeks leading up to Resurrection Sunday or Easter, some call it, what do some people do? They involve themselves in the Lenten, whatever, the Lenten season. Or when that clock ticks down to zero on December 31st, you have people that make New Year's resolutions, right? They're going to give up. So when we talk about making a sacrifice, this is not what we're talking about. For some people, this kind of sacrifice is usually associated with the Lenten season or with New Year's resolutions, when pious people voluntarily decide to forego something they enjoy or cherish in the interest of good health or spiritual growth. This is, of course, a valid kind of sacrifice, but it is not the sense that we are talking about here. But the sacrifices associated with priestly work are something different. Here, the word is about offering up sacrifices as acts of worship to God. Now, the Aaronic priesthood offered up mostly physical items, such as, give me some, lambs, pigeons, turtle doves. So we said animals is one of the subcategories here we have listed. Another subcategory we have listed here is fruit of the ground. So what else? Grains, wheat. Yeah, those kind of offerings, right? Things that of their first fruits of their crops, whatever they be. So these sacrifices were mostly related to physical items, physical in nature. But Peter specifies that the sacrifices offered up to God by a New Testament priest are what? Spiritual. Rather than physical, we are to offer up spiritual sacrifices. Well, what are these sacrifices? So we need to look at a parallel passage in Hebrews chapter 13. So turn over there with me. And this verse, tied to what we're seeing here in 1 Peter chapter 2, is going to be the thesis statement, the backbone of the path that we're going to follow here tonight. So in Hebrews chapter 13, verses 15 and 16, keep in mind this idea of the priesthood of all believers and these sacrifices that we are to offer. So verse 15 says, "Through him then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is, the fruit of the lips that gives thanks to his name. And do not neglect doing good and sharing, for with such sacrifices, God is pleased." So, in Psalm 51:15, anybody have that? Someone want to grab Psalm 51:15 and read it for us? Okay. Okay, open my lips that my mouth may declare thy praise. And so we talk about this act of praise. So the sacrifice of good words, words of witness, are these two types of spiritual sacrifices. And then the sacrifice of good works, works of service. So that's going to be what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look at the sacrifice of praise and the sacrifice of good works, words of witness, and works of service. So Hebrews 13:15 says this, the sacrifice of praise, the fruit of the lips. That's an interesting way to talk about it, isn't it? We should think of this as words spoken in some way. These are comparable to the thank offerings under the Mosaic Law. Psalm 27:6 in the King James uses the phrase, the sacrifices of joy. Would someone please look up Psalm 107:22? Who's got that? Want to grab that one for us? All right, team. All right, and 116:17. Who will grab that one? Bill? Okay. So 107:22 when you get there. Okay, sacrifices of thanksgiving with joyful singing. Phil?
To thee I shall offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving and call on the name of the Lord.
Okay, sacrifice of thanksgiving. In Old Testament times, sacrifices of spoken praise and thanksgiving were not intended to be substitutes for the physical sacrifices of animals and grain, but were meant to accompany the latter as a sign of the sincerity in which they were offered. So they were an extra kind of thing. These sacrifices of thanksgiving and praise and joy, those are not meant as substitutes for the physical, because those were necessary. In the context of Hebrews 13:15, though, God is now saying and telling us to forget what? The physical sacrifices that were involved in the Mosaic law, right? So those things, the blood of bulls and goats and those things, has no more need for it. However, he says to just continue to offer up the shouts of joy themselves, the fruit of the lips, praising God for the one true sacrifice of Jesus, the Lamb of God. So in both cases, the physical sacrifices were necessary, and the sacrifices of praise and thanksgiving were added to them. But now we have the one true, final, once-for-all sacrifice that's been made, and therefore we still have the sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving. We still can offer that one. So, here's the question. Where are these sacrifices to be offered? Where? The Old Testament thank offerings were made in the tabernacle or temple. So, what about any other kind of offerings? Do we have any other locales that were approved? Locations for physical sacrifices? They were to occur at the temple, yes, or the tabernacle. And there were very strict regulations for these. The center of worship was those physical places and or buildings, right? They could make their own altar and do things? I don't know if I could answer that. I don't believe so, but we know that the center of what was taking place was definitely in the tabernacle or temple. In the New Testament times, however, we do not have such a physical headquarters for worship or a physical building equivalent to the Old Testament temple, do we? Physical building? In fact, the church itself, the people of God, is the New Testament equivalent to the Old Testament temple. We are the living stones that are being built up as a spiritual house for carrying out our work as priests. Now, remember what's the question. Where are these sacrifices to be offered? So before we move on, let me ask this question. Typically, for the Christian person, and I'm using the term loosely, in Christendom, where are the sacrifices of praise offered? 1 hour a week, right here. For most, it's that way, right? It is true that we do have church buildings, but these are not comparable to the Old Testament temple. It is true that we, as the church, do come to these church buildings to sing songs of praise to God. In fact, we sing one that's pretty much on the nose, right? We bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord. Let's just talk about that phrase for a moment. Is that a biblically correct statement? We bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord. This is a Dan Kelly special right here. You would like this one. We bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord. So we bring the sacrifice of praise. Anything objectionable about that? Seems pretty straightforward, right? Can you think of any way that could be looked at as not correct? Is any part of that phrase not line up with Scripture? What about into the house of the Lord? going to be picky. So how do most people use that then into the house of the Lord? We're bringing the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord. What's in their mind when they sing that? And when they think about the words, hopefully they are. That into here, right? But if you sing, we bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord, then it's all right. See, if you understand in that sense, if your understanding is we are the spiritual household of God, that we are the spiritual building, and we can bring praise into that, how does that change the song then? Okay, we see ourselves more in that spiritual reality, but what else? Say that again? It's not important where you do it. Okay? Take that idea and expand upon it. Wherever you are. You're not low, you're not regulated to this space at 8082 West State Road 256, are you? We bring the sacrifice of praise into the house of the Lord. Well, that's anywhere, anytime, right? But see, sometimes we don't think in those terms. The problem, though, on the next page, top of page 3, is that this is not enough to enable us to do our priestly work. Talking about this location. Is this a corporate worship together and corporate praise and sacrifices of praise? Is that an important part of your life as a Christian? Absolutely. But it's not enough for us to do our priestly work. By itself, this does not fulfill the real purpose of priestly sacrifices, which is to bring sinners into a saving relationship with God. Now, don't read any further. So if we do take it seriously, that we want to do our job as priests and bring people into a saving relationship with God, but we understand the place where that occurs is here, how does that change things? Okay. Okay. So how will that change what happens here with that in mind? You're taking seriously your responsibility. Okay, but maybe how would it change? Put yourself in a leadership position of what's going to happen here in the direction it's pointed. Well, you might grow. In fact, you might grow a lot. See, there are many leaderships that have decided that this time here is for the lost. That what happens in this building when we gather is for that purpose. And they've given it the name seeker sensitive. You ever heard that phrase? You guys never? I'm kind of glad that you've never heard that phrase. But there's a lot of churches that their leadership has determined that the worship gatherings of the believers is for the purpose of winning the lost in that time frame. And so everything that is done in mind with catering to the lost person that might be there. That's the focus. So what happens to, what kind of information do you share with a person that doesn't have any kind of understanding? Do you talk about, do you mind the deep recesses of the Word in those things? Where do you keep it? Right? Kind of surface, right? Because we don't get too deep. Why? We're not going to understand. So where do you end up camping out? And so if all you have that is available that you are dispensing is a steady diet of milk because we don't want to go past the non-believer, then all you're ever dispensing is what? Milk, right? So where's everybody going to be? See where I said you might grow? In number, but where might you not grow? In depth. This is what we find a lot of times. In seeker-sensitive, if that's their goal. Now, should you always have the lost in mind in what you're doing? Should it be this is an interesting dynamic about approaches for the time of worship.
One good example, and I hope and pray, and I know that it's changed over the years, but when Bob Russell was at Southeast Christian Church, after he left that ministry, he actually said that he had done them a disservice because they did not get into the meat of the word.
Because they came to keep it broad, to appeal to them.
And that was, he said that on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
And he said he himself was going to be held accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
That, he did not teach what he should have.
Now that's one end of the spectrum, right? What's the other end of the spectrum? So inward that we don't ever think about or care about or do anything with them lost in mind. You can't get that way either. That can happen. So balance is the key. So, such a consideration, reaching the lost, point 5 at the top of page 3, has led some congregations to design their weekly church services around the purposes of making Christ and His church attractive to unbelievers. Everything about the services is intended to be seeker-sensitive or to be appealing to non-members on their own cultural level. One problem with this approach is that members themselves usually do not get the kind of spiritual food that enables them to grow to Christian maturity. Some great passages there that we don't have time for tonight. Another caution should be the fact that almost everything the New Testament itself says about gatherings of the church in the apostolic era shows that the assemblies were designed to meet the needs of Christians. Shouldn't the sacrifices of praise be offered out in the world if evangelism is the end goal of these sacrifices? Out in the world. So if that's the case, then what happens here while we keep the lost in our minds, and what should be happening in this place to enable that? Fed, equipped, prepared, ready for battle, all that good stuff. Another caution? Yeah, should the sacrifice of the Lord. Now, so there's this phrase when we talk about being out in the world, if evangelism, it says so that in verse 9 that we can proclaim the excellencies of God. These should be a witness to the world. We should offer up praises to God for how He has saved us. If the people that are in the world that are non-Christians, if they don't recognize in some form or fashion that you are a Christian, that is a problem. You should either in word or deed, hopefully both, make it abundantly clear that the Lord is the center of your life. Now, in a chemical reaction, you can have a couple of chemicals there that are reacting. But let's say that you wanted to react a little bit quicker. What would a chemist add to that? Okay, there's a word for it. A catalyst. Okay, something that enhances that reaction, that process. So when we think about this idea of letting people know that we are Christians, what could be a catalyst in that equation? What would motivate that you to do so? What could be a real catalyst in you sharing? Okay, your words. Okay. Okay, to take those opportunities. What might motivate you to do so? Well, okay. Yes, remember we talked about this Sunday night, right? Thankfulness. See, I think thankfulness is an incredible catalyst. And if you have a person who is truly and deeply thankful for their salvation, they're not going to be able to shut up about it. It's going to come out all the time when we realize what has been done. We have proper thankfulness. If we lack thankfulness in our lives, I think our witness shrinks incredibly. These spiritual sacrifices are our personal testimony as to how good it is to be a Christian. We should be telling people this. We should be showing them this. This is our evangelistic testimony, wherein we praise God for saving us with the purpose of leading others to salvation. We must realize that priesthood is what we do outside the church building when we are mixing with the world of unbelievers. To be able to offer the sacrifice of praise in such situations, we must concentrate upon overcoming our fear of talking about our faith. There's two great ways to overcome your fear. Developing more gratitude for our salvation, and I would add to that, the more knowledge that you have about your salvation, the more gratitude you will have. The more that you understand God and His Word and what He's done through your study of His Word, the more gratitude you should have. So the sacrifice of praise, of good words, what we say and do, how we act, our thankfulness, all those things should proclaim the excellencies of God. Now, we still haven't got to this epiphany. Was for me. But we're going to get there here shortly. So the second thing is the sacrifice of doing good and sharing works of service, we could sum up. These priestly sacrifices are basically what we call benevolence. Benevolence. One dictionary defines benevolence, first of all, as an attitude, quote, the desire to do good to others. So it's an attitude. You can have a benevolent attitude, right? Is that enough? It's not really, is it? Do you really have a benevolent attitude if you don't do anything? No, really. The necessary actions are part of the equation, necessary part of the equation. Oh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to look there in a little bit. So benevolence is more than an attitude. It also includes the specific kind of actions or deeds. The second dictionary meaning puts it an act of kindness. So if you have a desire to do good to others with acts of kindness, you have benevolence. Benevolence means giving help to those who need it. It is exactly what Hebrews 13:16 says, by doing good and sharing. Good priests must offer these kinds of spiritual sacrifices, which we call works of service. I believe it's in Galatians where it says that we are saved by grace unto good works. Those good works are the works that we do as the priesthood of all believers. And those good works should then proclaim the excellencies of God, which should bring people what? To Him. Make it attractive to Him. See how it's a cycle. It's cyclical. It works. It's a beautiful process. So these good, what we call works of service, such as random acts of kindness, as opportunities present themselves. Let me ask you a question. Let's say, and I've had this happen to me, I've been really blessed. I've had it happen 2 or 3 times in the last 6 months to a year, where someone has paid for a meal for us, either at a drive-through window or in a restaurant. That's pretty cool, right? A random act of kindness. What's missing in that equation, though? Okay, you're not able to thank them, which would be nice. But the person's probably doing it because they don't want to be thanked. They just want to do it for the purpose of doing it. But what's missing? We don't know the why, do we? What if someone paid for my meal as a way to Allah? Sure. Which is fine. See what I'm saying? So here we have to figure out these random acts of kindness. If they are to point to Jesus Christ, then somehow we have to connect that dot, don't we? Right. That would be because we love Him. But from our perspective of doing good, if it doesn't somehow point to Jesus Christ directly, are we missing something? Let's say that we help someone out randomly, and they benefit from something that we do, but they don't know why we're doing it. They don't know. All right. In our world today, somebody does something good for you, they could attribute it to anything if they don't know why. They could attribute the random act of kindness, the things that were done for us. We were in a restaurant one time. I was on Sunday afternoon after church, and of course we got a little bit with us, and just kind of stands out in the crowd for a lot of reasons. And my first thought was, well, those people got our meal because of that. That could very well be. But I didn't know. Still a wonderful thing for us to experience. But it could have been, again, I don't know that person's motivation. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward. We'll see why here in a little bit. I'm not saying it's wrong to do something like that. It's not. I'm saying if your purpose is to show the love of Jesus Christ and you do it and they don't know why, they're missing something, you're missing something. Let's keep going. So we talk about these random acts of kindness as the opportunities present itself, not only on the spontaneous individual level, but also as part of the church body, which should be active in planning benevolent activities. A large part of the New Testament teaching on giving has to do with giving for benevolent purposes. We can read those passages if you want. Every congregation should have a strong benevolence ministry. So the question therein lies, before you read any further, what is the church's responsibility for the needy, to the needy? Is the church responsible for all the needy? Church whole. I know you're not, because I told you not to. Okay, that wasn't the question. The question was, what is our responsibility? Okay, to do good, to do benevolent things. What is our responsibility to the poor and the needy? Is it the church's responsibility to care for all the poor and needy? Okay. All right, you guys are narrowing down too quickly. You can answer my question. Is it the church's responsibility to care for all, ALL, the poor and needy?
No.
You guys are cold-hearted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and spring on you a scripture that has tormented me. Turn to Matthew 25. Now, our Bible here has for us there the judgment at the top of this in mine. Anybody have anything different? The little man-made heading? The judgment. Verse 31. The judgment. Sheep and goats, okay. But when the Son of Man comes in glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another as the sheep separates the sheep and the goats. Okay, is this a big deal what's happening here? Oh, yeah, it's a big deal. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger, invite you in, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them," right? "You did it to me." Right? We talk about the least of them. Isn't that where we settle in on this? So when we talk about the least of them, our mind goes to what? All the poor needy, right? So this scripture tells us that we have to care for all the poor needy, right? And if you don't, what? Keep reading. Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire which is prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they themselves also said, "Lord, where do we see all these things?" Verse 45, "Then he will answer them, saying, Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." Okay, I'm just going to say this, and I hope this doesn't make you uncomfortable, that every single person that's ever asked you for money and hunger, you give it to them? I haven't. Every single time? So we're saying what if one time we don't? Does that mean you're bound? This scripture has tormented me. Nancy?
So do we need to take in the 10,000 people that's coming to world?
Oh, yeah. Christians should, according to this.
So we're going to load our houses up. This says brothers.
What do you mean, brothers?
Well,
So you've always understood this as brothers in Christ that we're responsible for?
that's where it started.
Hold on, you've always understood that? You have? That this is just for Christians?
We talked about that before because who you say no to, what is that?
Okay, here's my epiphany. That word brothers, I've never caught it. Okay, so turn to James chapter 2. You've never heard this preached about all the poor? What's that? Oh, yeah. There's a lot wrong with chapter 2. That's the sermon title. That might be catching put on the board. What uses, chapter 2, verse 14, James, what uses it, my brethren? If a man says he has faith but has no works, can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is without clothing and need a daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warm and be filled, and yet you do not give them what is necessary for their body, what use is that? I've read this a million times. Who's writing the book here? James. That's right. Who's he writing to? And he says, brothers and sisters, who's that? It's the church. I've always taken this just in a general sense. Don't tell me I'm the only one. Well, I mean, brothers and sisters is the same word. Brother in Christ, sister in Christ. When this is talking about brothers and sisters, this is not saying to all people. It's saying brothers and sisters. Turn to 1 John. I think some of you are claiming that you knew this and you really didn't. I can get my pages to turn. Come on. There. 3:17 and 18. I'm jumping ahead in our list here, but this is where it needs to go. But whoever has the world's goods beholds his brother in need and closes his heart against him. How does the love of God abide in him? Little children, let us not love with word nor with tongue, but with deed and truth. Okay, again, when it uses the word here, brother, it means brother in Christ. Yes. The Bible speaks clearly on these things, but the church would be there in what circumstances? Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, so let's keep digging here when we talk about 3 kinds of benevolence. We talk about emergency benevolence. In Galatians 6:10, it says, while time allows, something to that effect. Let's look up the exact wording. 6:10. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all men, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. We talk about this idea of opportunity. So we talk about emergency benevolence. So this would be the kind of situation where, regardless of Christian or non-Christian, that you would step in and help out. Is there any account in the Bible that, or teaching in the New Testament that speaks to this idea of helping those in need regardless of circumstance? Yep, Good Samaritan, right? Was that would you call that an emergency situation? Yeah. At that point, did it matter? In or out of the household of faith? No. There are a lot of those circumstances. Yeah, that's a strong possibility. Or you might know, or it could be, there's a lot of different stuff that we talk about emergency situations now. So when we talk about this idea of let us do good to all people, so this would be in those circumstances of when we talk about an emergency situation, an urgent need that has to be dealt with, life or death, that kind of thing, the church should step in and help out. Or individual Christians as well. Now, here's my question to you before we move on to brotherhood benevolence. If it was the church's responsibility to care for the needy, all needy, would that motivate anyone to come to Christ? Is it possible that it could motivate them to come to Christ?
It could, but more than likely wouldn't. Look at the ones that follow Jesus just to get their bellies full.
Okay.
And he's the greatest preacher ever.
Now we got to think about it from our perspective, true. We got to think of it from our perspective of investing time, money, and resources into what we're doing and the purpose behind it. If we established as something, okay, we would run out of resources. Where would that leave those in the brotherhood within need? If we were, there would be a problem there, right? But what if it were known that if you're part of the brotherhood, that they're going to care for you no matter what? They're commanded to care for one another. They're commanded to take care of one another. Wouldn't you want to be part of that? Oh. Okay. Don't take it down that road. But for the person who's in need, if they could just get what they want without any strings, without any accountability, without anything, and they know that the church is supposed to take care of me no matter what, why become a Christian? I don't want all that extra when I can get everything I need. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a dynamic here that's very similar, that it's better on this side of the fence. So when we talk about brotherhood benevolence, especially to those who are of the household of faith, to our fellow believers, as resources indeed do have limit, if we have to choose helping fellow Christians in need is our priority, it is our primary responsibility of benevolence. If it is known that Christians will do anything to help take care of one another, then you're going to want to be part of that. That's what makes it attractive. That's part of it. Listen to this. If you do have the book, I'm on page 157. Sometimes we miss the point regarding the Old Testament teaching and even the teaching of the Gospels on the subject of helping the poor and the needy. When the prophets condemned those who ignored those in need and enjoined their audience to help those in distress, they were talking about the responsibility of the Israelites to help their fellow Israelites, not their pagan neighbors, the Philistines, the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Romans. You guys remember in the times when you talk about it's the book of Amos? It talks about that there are those that are exploiting the poor and that they are laying upon their rich homes and with all these things, and then they'll pick a speck of dust off the, right? I think it's Amos, that they'll go to those far just to get a penny from them. That's talking about within the Israelites to help their fellow Israelites. When the apostles collected money to distribute, who were they collecting for? Yeah, the saints. When the apostles collected money to distribute to those suffering from famine or other kinds of need, they were distributed to Christians in need, not to the general Roman or Greek or even the Jewish population. When they were taking collections, it was to give to the saints, the brothers and sisters. The New Testament teaching on this is quite clear. The mikasa, sukasa spirit of Acts chapter 4, verses 32 through 35, applied to the church only. The collections Paul received during his missionary journey were for the saints. Even the acts of service Jesus cites as being important on the judgment day are things done for these brothers of mine. I'm going to underline that in my Bible. Yep. Other references to Christian benevolence mention good works done for a brother or sister, and as we see in James chapter 2 and 1 John 3. We're not done though. See, this is brothers and sisters is the primary benevolence, but that's not it. We have the mercy, we have the brotherhood benevolence, we also have evangelistic benevolence. Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before men so they can do what? Glorify your Father in heaven, right? In 1 Peter 2:12, that they may observe your good deeds, and it essentially says the same thing, that they may glorify your Father in heaven. Local congregations should participate in benevolent acts directed at the world for the purpose of showing them the love of Christ and attracting them to Him for salvation. If we are involved in acts of benevolence, where we use our time, resources, money, interaction, anything, it should be for the very specific stated purpose of showing them the love of Jesus Christ. If it's simply for showing them love, we've missed the boat. If we are a part or structure of some kind of ministry that doesn't link somehow to the truth of Christianity, the love of Jesus Christ, if Jesus is not involved somehow in name, if it's not part of the stated purpose, if there's not prayer going on with individuals, if there's not some sort of hook, then we're not doing all we should be doing. Church outreach and impact community events, Christian priests, these are your opportunities. These spiritual sacrifices are not just to help the needy with their physical needs. If that's where it all ends, again, we're doing good, but we're not doing as much as we should with those opportunities. We must always be clear. Let me back up. Not just for their physical needs, but for the main purpose of winning them to Christ. We must always be clear when we are offering such sacrifices that we're doing this in the name of Jesus Christ. If you do something good for someone with the intent of bringing them to Jesus Christ, and they don't know that it's for the intent of bringing them to Jesus Christ, then you've done something good, but have you done your duty as a priest of the gospel?
So then are you suggesting that, say you were to go through McDonald's drive-through and you were to pay it forward for the person behind you, give the cashier a card, maybe saying because we've been blessed by God, and then when they get up there and say you don't owe anything, then give them that card?
I would say yes. If there should be something to link to Jesus Christ. Because otherwise, the person, you're leaving it to the imagination of the person. Something very specific. And that is something, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's something that we're going to try, actually. We've got to make sure that we're doing these things in the name of Jesus Christ. So here I've got some things, so write that in there. Brainstorm examples of evangelistic benevolence. What other ideas do you have? What are other ways that individually or corporately that we could do something, an act of benevolence that would proclaim Jesus Christ, the excellencies of God? Okay, so that is something that we are involved in. That is an opportunity. Now let me ask you this question. And this might be a question that should be posed in a different context. But it should be our responsibility as leaders to make sure that what is occurring there is not just a food handout. Because if there's not other things going on, then we are missing the boat. So, you know what I'm saying? Otherwise, we might just go support a local food pantry that doesn't even have anything to do with Jesus. Maybe they do a better job of distributing food. Do you know what I'm saying? What if the house of hope, just talking in a general sense, right, not specifically, this is a what if, okay? What if they did a lousy job, if they let food spoil and they did things not according to, but we found a secular organization who did a better job of giving out food. If all we're doing is feeding the hungry, we should support the secular organization. See what I'm saying? emergency situations. Supposed to be, that's supposed to be the thing. We're not supposed to be seeing the same faces for 12 months in a row. You know, right, and so those are the kind of things we're talking about here. Because otherwise we're enabling certain things without proclaiming Jesus Christ, and we're just not really doing anybody any good. Actually, might be doing more harm than good. What are some other ideas? What other ideas of evangelistic benevolence might you have? I'll put you on the spot here, but sure. I mean, those are kind of those random acts of kindness. So let's just say that you help an elderly person at the store get something. What should you do if you're doing this for the glory of Jesus Christ? Yeah. Just tell them. Don't be afraid. I'm doing this because I love Jesus Christ. It's that simple. Sure, take an opportunity to invite them. Let them know that that's your purpose. That's what's motivating you. Otherwise, leave it to their imagination. They're just a good person. Maybe they were in the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Right? That's your motivation. That's how I was taught. Well, again, a good thing happens, but it's not fulfilling our roles as priests. That's what we're talking about. Okay, well, if you have some other ideas, we'd love to hear them. Funeral meals. What? Funeral meals. Okay, so that would be brotherhood benevolence, but even so, if you have the intent, because 99 times out of 100, there will be people that come to a funeral that are not saved. So that could be both. Is that we take an opportunity to reach out to someone who is outside the body of Christ in those circumstances through something like a funeral meal. If we just feed them and send them on their way, that's fine. But if we sit down and say, we're doing this because we love the Lord and we love you, and this kind of stuff, that's where we need to take advantage of those opportunities that we have before us. And when I say we, I mean all of us. It's all of our responsibilities. And if we all take those responsibilities into all areas of our lives, then hopefully that will proclaim the excellencies of God and bring people to Him.
Same thing with weddings and funerals, that if they ask you to do it, that's an opportunity to open up conversation for Jesus Christ.
Certainly.